Welcome to my study sessions, and this is how I study poker. This is not a pro seminar, just my personal routine. Hi everyone, it is Jason Velasco over at Balanced Poker, and I want to take you through a hand analysis that I went through, and I would love to know what you would do in this particular spot. Now, taking time off the tables to study your particular spots is a critical aspect of the Balanced Poker Life program, and I wanted to take you through how I approach the analysis of the particular hands that I deal with. So, in this particular situation, we are playing in the Philly Live $500 buy-in, $200K guarantee tournament. We are playing in day 1C, and we are about 15 to 20 players away from the money at this point in time. 12.5% of the players go through, which is actually 7 players went through based on the number of players in that field. And so we had still had about a little bit to go. So I'm still in mentally chip EV situation. So I'm looking to build stacks, and build stacks. I had been down to fumes. I'd fought back. I had now built a nice stack of about 35 big blinds. And in this particular situation, this is playing against the button and I'm in the small blind. The button opens up to 2 big blinds. So I'm in the small blind and I wake up with King 9 suited. I decide to 3-bet, and I 3-bet 4x into the pot. So he raises 2x, I raise up to 8 big blinds. The big blind folds, the button player calls. So let's talk about the pre-flop analysis. When I looked at the solver, it really hates my 3-bet. King 9 suited in this particular situation in the small blind is a pure call. And what it likes to do is it likes to raise with bigger hands like, of course, aces and all the big pairs, basically. And in fact, it's jamming quite a few kind of mediocre hands like King Queen off, King Jack off, 8s, 7s, but it's 3-betting things like aces through ace 10 suited and an ace 9 off. So those kind of hands, it's what it's looking for. So it's either looking for a pretty tight range for either raising or shoving, and the calling range is pretty small. King 9 suited fits right into that. So the solver prefers a call in this situation. So it does not like my 3-bet. Mistake number 1. So the button player ends up calling. And when I did my analysis of the button calling range in this particular situation, he's got a pretty wide calling range. Now he should be shoving with things like ace king off, ace queen off, ace jack off, ace 5 suited, ace 6 suited, which was a really interesting situation. And he should be shoving with 10s, jacks, even pocket deuces and pocket 3s, which I thought was a really interesting 4-bet shove approach. So something to think about, especially when you're playing online. Those are some of the things the solver wants to do where we take much more of a gamble in those particular situations. But the calling range is pretty significant. I mean, it's calling everything from ace 7 suited up, king deuce suited up, and a good mix of the queen suited and things like jack 10 suited, 10 9 suited, 10 8 suited, jack 10, all those type of things. So I was pretty surprised looking at his calling range, but I really can't blame him for the call. That is one of the key mistakes there. Did I really want to build a pot in that situation? And I probably shouldn't have. All right, so let's get to the flop. The flop comes ace of hearts, jack of spades, and 5 of clubs. Now, remember, I have King 9 suited of diamonds. And so the solver doesn't even have an option for the play that I have because King 9 suited is a pure call in that situation. And in many cases, the King 9 is just going to check fold if we had played it GTOE, but we didn't. So in this particular situation, it doesn't even have an approach, but I looked at what hands am I repping on the flop on an ace, jack 5 rainbow. And so what I'm representing there are things like ace king off, ace queen off, which actually should be jamming, ace king suited, ace queen suited, ace jack suited, those type of hands. So there's pretty big hands. I'm going to be betting almost all of my aces and 10s and things along those lines. I decide to make a small 1/3 pot bet on the flop, and then the button calls. So that's what I'm repping. And so when I looked at the button's calling range at this point in time, he's not really folding out a lot. So his range is pretty tight. So he's folding out a lot of his garbage hands, but he's calling any of the 10s that he called. He's calling off any of the queen jacks that he calls, basically any jack, and of course, aces and kings. So he's slow playing aces and kings in that particular situation. So he flats in this particular situation. Number 1, I think what I'm doing is I'm repping a big hand, but his calling range is pretty tight as well, and warning bells should be going off. Now, my plan in this particular situation was to basically bet and give up. So, because I'm representing the ace, and if he doesn't have the ace, he's going to be folding. So this is a really good exercise in me learning that how actually loose the calling range should be in that particular situation for the button. I don't think I blame myself for the 3-bet. Again, I'm representing a pretty solid range, and he's got a pretty big calling. So let's talk about the turn. So the turn comes out an innocuous 8 of diamonds. In this particular situation, the solver wants me, with the hands that I'm representing, to basically continue to bet. In fact, it's only calling kings at this particular situation in a few majority of times, but it's still betting queens, kings, aces, and it's flatting any of my aces that I've been playing with at this point in time. And even ace jack suited is kind of a mix of calling versus raising. And then of course we're betting. Now, one of the interesting things here in this particular situation with the hands that I'm repping when I'm betting is that it wants me to bet at least 50% of the pot and not shoving. I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, in this particular hand, I went ahead and checked because that was my plan, to check and give up. The button basically bets probably 70% of his stack, which is a 50 to 60% pot size bet, and I tank because I'm just making a show of things, and then I fold. Let's talk about things that I could have done better. On the turn, I could have represented those big hands and made that 50% pot bet, leaving myself with about 10 to 12 big blinds and hopefully pushing that player into a fold. When I was talking about it with some of my colleagues, they were saying, well, you're representing such a big hand, you should go ahead and shove in that particular spot because you're representing all of those hands, and you can basically put someone off of a loose ace or low played ace, because I'm representing aces, I'm representing ace king there, and even ace jack in those particular situations. The solver wants me to either bet 50% or at this point in time, if I've got those big hands. I think as a bluff, I could have bet that 50% bet and probably would have gotten to fold. My sense is he had a 10, something like Jack 10 or something like that he was floating, and I probably could have pushed him out of the pot with another bet, but instead I lost a pretty sizable pot in that particular situation. So a couple things that I learned as part of this exercise is I can probably make looser calls with suited connectors with face cards to basically continue to build a pot and hopefully get lucky with a flush draw or big king or something along those lines, which allows me to go into check call mode and basically try to build that pot that way, or basically make sure that I've got those super solid hands and raise appropriately in the small blind situation. The other thing that I learned was if you're going to build a story, you should continue with it. And now I don't need to go all in because, again, having chips in a tournament is still important. And if you're in a bluffing scenario, you want to be able to represent a particular hand. And anything, as I mentioned before, those strong hands aren't going and shoving. In fact, a shove by a thinking player would probably have gotten a call, and with any ace, any jack, that type of thing, because again, I'm representing so much air or nuts. So it's a very polar bet. It likes 50% because it keeps the other player in the pot. It looks like a value bet and something that I should be representing. Anyways, I thought that was a really cool lesson to learn. Thank you for taking the time to go through this hand analysis with me. Please put comments in there. Tell me how much I messed up the hand, because I honestly believe that I totally messed it up. What we're going to do is we're going to learn and become a better player by taking these spots, breaking them down, and learning from them. Anyways, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate the time that you've spent with me going through this exercise. If you have any questions around our Balanced Poker Life coaching program, feel free to reach out to me. We'll set up a consultation, talk about some of the programs with you, as well as making sure that if you are interested in participating in any of the community work that we're doing, please let me know. If you've got questions for our mailbag, go ahead. We love answering questions. In fact, we are giving away hoodies every month to someone selected at random for sending in a mailbag question. And of course, please like and subscribe. We really could use your support building our Balanced Poker community. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.